All right. Hey, folks. So we are back for part 2 of the October Q&A. Hoping to make this into a monthly thing. So let's get started. So first question from Soso. And it is, what changes when you do pull downs using a bar with more angled down handles than on the regular bar? They feel so much harder and I don't understand why. Now, what Soso is describing here is using a pull down handle with the bars angled downwards and pulling like this, rather than one with the handle straight across. So she finds the angles downwards much harder. Now, I'm going to answer this question in a way that will probably be the most useful to you. I think if you have a large discrepancy between the weight you can use on different handles or with, for example, different form, like, for example, medium grip versus a wider grip or underhand grip versus outhand grip, it shows that that's something you need to work on. Like, I'll give you an example. When I first started lifting, every squat that I did was with a wide stance. Every leg press that I did was with a high on the pad wide stance. If you asked me to do anything resembling something which was quad dominant, I was terrible at it. So I used to avoid it, right? So front squats were horrendous. I could probably front squat maybe 80 kilos while I was back squatting about 220. So that indicated a large discrepancy in strength between my quads and my hamstrings, front of my body and the back of my body. Back of my body was considerably stronger. So that means, regardless of what this particular thing means for you, it means that you have to work on the thing which you're weaker on. So for me, it meant ultimately I was limiting my potential in my quads and limiting the potential of my squat because I was ignoring those muscles. And I think for you, what this points to is, rather than something inherently wrong with a movement, it may just be a weakness that you have. And I think particularly for a different handle, because that's such a minor difference, it probably behooves you to get stronger on that movement. It indicates some sort of strength imbalance, which may well be something which causes injury sometime in the future. So to safeguard yourself, I would work on that harder handle and get better at it. Now, the next question is from the same person. Upper quad pain when close to lockout in both the deadlift and the squat, only in that position and only under load. I can't reproduce the pain at all without weight. What did I pull or strain? Now, I had something similar when I was doing leg extensions 2 or 3 months ago, fairly recently, and I was getting quite heavy to the leg extensions. And obviously, the leg extension is a exercise which mostly works sort of the rectus femoris or the teardrop kind of muscle. And but I got a pain right in the top part of my hip. And again, like yourself, I couldn't reproduce that pain anywhere else with any other exercises. So it didn't actually bother me on any lift, but what it did mean was I needed to back off on that exercise for a while. There are loads of smaller underlying muscles which contribute to stability in all kinds of ways. I mean, that muscle that I obviously strained, it wasn't even a prime mover. It was just simply some sort of stabilizing muscle close to the hip, which isn't really even heavily involved in the leg extension, but I managed to strain it. So I would say for this, stay away from squats and deadlifts until they feel better. Well, at least stay away from about a week or so, and maybe rebuild back up slowly, assuming you have no pain. Let pain be your guide, but certainly it's a good lesson that you should back off. And some of the more common ones that I feel that I've ignored in the past have been shoulder problems, elbow problems, knee problems. Ultimately, though, something that I hear all the time is, Faz, what can I do if something hurts? Like, what can I do to rehab? It's like, rest and then start light. Like, people insist on trying to do stuff to enable them to not do the thing which is the most effective, which is just to lay off it for a while, maybe a week or so, and then build back up again. They just want to carry hammering the same body part over and over again. Like, they'll say things like, heavy eccentrics, or like, I think if you have knee pain, then loading the bar up to 120% of your squat weight and lowering that in the thoughts that it's going to help your knee pain, just think about it. It doesn't sound logical, does it? So it's just try not to do things which hurt. And if something does hurt, which is fairly fundamental, then leave it until the sharp pain goes and then rebuild slowly. So yeah, let's move on to the next question. So Richard, sorry if I butcher this name, Richard. Richard Arias Quintero says, I like your channel. It's fun, simple, and very useful. My training for speed work, I do jumps and throws, MB medicine ball. Throw a medicine ball between my warm-up sets, 5 through 1 forever, or jumps between my sets, no warm-up, the lower days, deadlift and squat, like Brian Alsruh. I like to do the speed work. It makes me feel stronger. Do you have any other ideas for speed work and combination with strength work? Interesting. I'll be honest, I've not heard of this from Brian Alsruh. I don't know that's something that he recommends. So Brian recommends, if what you're saying is I'm reading this right, Brian recommends doing jumps between your deadlift and squat sets. Is that right? Am I getting that right? Can anyone confirm that? I don't follow Brian, so I don't really know what he does. If I was doing speed work, I would just literally do it as a separate session in itself. So I'm not sure I particularly like mixing protocols. I don't really like mixing strength and speed work particularly. It's not something that I generally do. If I'm doing speed work, and I do find value in speed work. Actually, if you look at my program, which one is it? The Tactician. The middle day, the light day, is a speed day, basically. So I do like speed work. I think it's quite good. It's quite specific. With regards to doing something for you, I think the common ones that are prescribed are things like box jumps and clapping push-ups. I'll tell you why I have a problem with that. So box jumps I have a problem with because typically if they're done incorrectly and they're done really fast, as in a lot of them at once, damaged Achilles tendons tend to be a problem. So jumping on the box and then jumping back off again and then rebounding back into a box, it tends to be problematic. And I've seen more people wreck their Achilles tendon on that than otherwise. So there's a problem there with the explosive rebound and converting that energy back into another push. It causes problems with ligaments. Same with the clapping push-ups. The actual extension is fine, but then you have to land and then do it repeatedly over and over again. I would rather, if somebody is going to do speed work, I would rather them use a barbell and I would rather use bands. So a barbell, because it's a controlled movement. Okay, you're not just exploding your body weight up. And bands, because they will allow you to carry on making force right the way to lockout. One of the things that the human body naturally does with a barbell is it naturally slows down toward lockout because it doesn't want to jam your joints. It's fine in a punch, but if you're doing something like a bench press, you will naturally slow down. No one just explodes past lockout unless they let go of the bar and that's what they plan to do. But I don't recommend that. Have some bands or even some chains. Have some way of making it harder so you can carry on pushing hard all the way to lockout, but you have the resistance which slows you down, so you're not going to jam your joints and your ligaments and stuff like that. So yeah, if you were to do speed work, I would recommend doing it with a barbell and doing a variety of barbell work. So it could even be chins, could be chins, it could be bench presses, could be overhead presses, could be squats, could be deadlifts. Any number of exercises you can do for speed. They're not typically seen outside of powerlifting circles. Squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, and benches are not typically seen as speed work outside of powerlifting circles. But for those people, they consider like box squats and clapping push-ups to be speed work. But this type of speed work, I believe, is far more effective because it's much more controlled. The incidence of injury is far less, I think. So that's kind of what I would go for if you were to do speed work. Combining speed and strength work, maybe it's just me. Maybe I don't know much about it, and maybe that's what Brian recommends. But it's not something I have particularly had much experience with, and it's not something I've ever had recommended to me. Okay, next question. This is from Bruno Suarez Rodriguez. Great name. Bruno's from Brazil. Thank you for the question, Bruno. So I'm new to the party. Discovered your channel through Massive Iron, whom I've been following for some time. I would like to ask you how you would train for someone that could only train in a gym setup for 2 days on the weekends and deploys Monday to Friday in a Navy ship. Okay, it's an interesting setup. So I would say if you're going to do that, at least one of your weekend days should be a very heavy full body day, definitely. Possibly, if you want to train both days, I would do an upper on the Saturday and a lower on the Sunday and really ramp up the volume on those days. So you can't really overdo volume if you are going to be resting for 5 days. And yes, you can do, jump rope, you can do parallettes, because he goes on to mention in the question that he's going to get some equipment for the ship, which is a good idea, a pull-up bar and stuff like that. It's just calisthenics. I think that's great. But yeah, for you, Bruno, I would do a upper on the Monday and a lower on the Sunday. Sorry, upper on the Saturday and lower on the Sunday. And I would aim for about 10 sets or more per body part. If you need to restrict rest periods and really get some density in the workouts, I would do that as well. So really try and jam your workload in. So if you're doing 10 sets for chest, back, shoulders, that's 30, maybe arms, that's 40. So that's a lot of work for one session. But if you reduce the rest periods down, you could get that into an hour, hour and a half. And then on Sunday, you can do the same with legs. You can get that into an hour and a half if you really make the density of your workouts quite high. So don't restrict yourself to the usual, 2 minutes, which is the scientific answer. Work on your work capacity, get your rest periods a little bit lower, and try and condense a lot of work into that weekend, because you're not going to really overtrain. Your focus should still be on progression week to week, but you're not going to massively overtrain based on 2 days of hard weightlifting with some calisthenics thrown in. But I do think it's a good idea to get some parallettes, do some push-ups, do some dips if you can, do some pull-ups, bodyweight squats. Is all quite useful. I think that in midweek, doing a couple of sessions of calisthenics would be good, and then on the weekends you've got an upper and upper lower. I think that sounds fine. That'll be good. All right, next question from Raymond Hirons. Thanks for all the great info. As an over 50-year-old, what should my workout look like? And should I not do a lot of sets per exercise, full body or bro splits? And do I train to failure? Any help would be appreciated, Faz. Raymond, Raymond, this is something I can speak quite confidently on. I think you should more than likely avoid failure on most of your exercises. I don't feel that's a good return for your training investment. I would rather you err on the side of doing more overall work and less training to failure. Now, you might train to failure on the last set of every exercise, but certainly not on every exercise. So you may want to do a set to cross approach. Let's say, just as an example, let's say you're doing bench press and you do 60 kilos for set 10 after you've warmed up, 10 and then 10, and then you fail on, say, 9 reps. That's okay. Okay. I wouldn't try and do a system where you're failing on every single set. That would be too much. I would rather you just get the work in. Now, in terms of volume, I don't think you should lowball the volume. No, I don't think that much either. I think you should start with a reasonable amount. Like for you, Raymond, I would start with full body twice a week. That is fine. Full body twice a week. Start with something like 3 sets per body part per session. So that is 6 total sets per week. Okay. Now, see if you're progressing at that stage. If progress from session to session feels hard, don't just think, oh, it's my age. Because no, add some more volume into the workouts. Go from, say, 3 sets per body part to, I don't know, maybe something like 5 or 6 sets per body part. So you're doing more like 12 sets per week. I would still try and restrict yourself to 2 sessions per week to begin with, and try and get some more volume in there. And I would, same as what I said to Bruno, actually, I would try and condense your workout. So don't be afraid to reduce your rest periods in between sets and really get that work capacity up. Because at this stage, the workload will really help. Getting yourself in a bit of a sweat will help. So rest periods maybe more resembling a minute and a half might be a good idea to really get some workload in. And that way you can cover your whole body in a reasonable hour. I wouldn't want you in the gym for much longer than an hour. But certainly if you're training full body twice a week, you're not going to really tax your recovery as much as if you're in there every other day or 3 days a week. So I think you can do quite a lot on your 2 full body days. And then perhaps a couple of days a week, maybe do some sort of sporting activity with friends, like play some tennis, some badminton, go for a jog. And then you've still got 3 whole rest days every week. So 2 lifting days, 2 cardio days, 3 rest days. I think that's fine. And similar to what I do, I would track your resting heart rate, track your blood pressure, and see how they respond to this level of exercise. I use my resting heart rate as a gauge for how my general stress is. I know some people like to use HRV, but I use heart rate. I think it's more accurate. So my heart rate is around about 55 on most days. If it gets very high to that 60-ish, then I know, okay. And usually my sleep starts to go, then I know, okay, maybe I'm erring on the side of overtraining, or at least overreaching. And I can overreach even if I am making progress in the gym. So it's not like progress is the be all and end all of overreaching or overtraining. Like you can still make progress in the gym, but your mental and physical health be going to crap, and you don't want that. So I would start with 2 days a week of lifting, full body. Start with 2 days a week of that and 2 days a week of some cardio exercise. See if you can progress on that. If you can, great. carry on with it. Do the minimum necessary to progress. If you can't, that's when I would add a little bit more work in and maybe look at getting those total sets per week closer to about 10. If you want to see a program which is a good example of this, check out my Wizard program, but just leave out the light day. Don't do the light day, do the heavy day and do the medium day, and follow the recommendations in that book for adding volume as well. Just always skip out the middle day. So that's what I would recommend for you, Raymond. I think that's a very, very good working schedule, and you can do a lot with that. Like it's not a old man's routine by any means. Like it's a good routine. So it's a good solid routine, and don't think that you're going to be able to be capable of any less at this age. Like you're still young in the grand scheme of things. So 2 days a week, heavy lifting, get the volume in, and then a couple of days of cardio. Your body will improve as long as you don't overtax it. That's the key. All right, thanks, Raymond. Let's move on to the next question. Bulbu says, how and when do you fit in a deload training day a week? All right, dude. So there are basically, once you're past the beginner stage, there are basically 2 ways that you can do periodization as far as I mostly practice. 2 broad ways. The first way is the way that I use if I'm doing block periodization, which is to have a specific deload after a period of time. Now, you've asked for how and when. In terms of when, that is what I look at when I'm working with a client. So in general, the first block will be about 4 to 5 weeks of loading. Usually 4 weeks if their client is a bit more on the advanced side. Usually 5 to 6 weeks if a client is more of a beginner or is a female. They tend to go longer without breaks as well. Don't ask me why, it's just what I've seen, it's just what I've experienced. And so I start off with like an idea that we're probably going to go for between 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the client's circumstances. That's what I start with because I don't know the client yet. And then as we run through the weeks, week by week, we evaluate what's going on. By about the 4th, 5th, and 6th week, I start to pay a good deal of attention to little aches and niggles, little dips in motivation, things like that, little signs that you can tell that the client is just maybe starting to head into rough waters a little bit. And that's when I give them probably maybe 1 last week, and then we do a deload. I always preemptively deload. I don't want to deload when they're on the verge of breaking down. Then they've gone too far. Okay. So usually that ends up being a deload at about the 5th, 6th, or 7th week after working for 4, 5, or 6 weeks. That's usually when it happens. But you have to, as a coach, you've got to recognize the signs. So with yourself, if you're coaching yourself, look for the signs that you are starting to struggle a little bit. Now, those signs will probably manifest itself in looking for another program. That's what I find. You'll probably start to second guess the program that you're on. I see it every time. People's mind plays tricks on them. They go, well, maybe I should try this. Maybe I should try a different routine. Yeah, maybe I should try this. I know Faz told me to do this, but Brian Aldridge told me to do this, or Steve Shaw told me to do this, or or whatever, right? So then they start to switch programs. Like if it's between me, Steve, and Jeffrey Verity Schofield, we all pretty much say the same thing, right? So what it's more to do with is actually your mindset and the fact that you need a break. So that is when you would go for a break. Look out for those signs when your mind's starting to get a bit like, Basically, all your mind wants to do is protect your body because it feels like you've overstrained it. So your mind is giving you all these outs, right? The analogy would be it's like being in a bad relationship, So all of a sudden you start to look for flaws in your partner, and you're like, got to get out. You just don't want to address the fact that you actually want to leave the relationship, right? So, but anyway, that's like when. So look for the signs. Now, how? This depends on how tired you are and how badly you've let it go. If you've done it quite well and you've preempted the fatigue, then all you need is a light week. So maybe go down if you're doing a lot of volume. So maybe if you're doing 15 to 20 sets per body part, ramp that right down to say, I don't know, 6 sets per body part per week, or as little as 3 sets, whatever. And in terms of the intensity, keep the weight on the bar quite high. If you're feeling beat up, like you've done too much actual weight, then the weight on the bar has to come down by 10 to 20% as well. Or just take a week off. I've also done that. I don't mind doing that. Back in the old Olympic lifting days, the Russians used to just take a week and do something else. Take a week, go swimming. Take a week and go take your significant other, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever else. Take them for some walks, some nice walks in the woods, up mountains, Do something different. Play some table tennis. Go for a jog. Go see a friend and play some tennis. Do something different for a week. That's okay as well. I mean, we are supposed to be well-rounded human beings, so do something else for a week. Don't see it as like, this is part of my plan, I've got to stick with it. See it as, well, every 4 to 6 weeks I get to do something different. So that's the first way. That's one way of doing things, is a deload. I'll stick with that actually, because that's what you asked. So I'll stick with that. I was going to cover changing exercises, but yeah, that hopefully answers your question, Bulbu. So right, this question from Super Moncol Klamol Patana. I'm really sorry if I pronounced that name wrong. Is rep speed decrease a good indicator of failure in a set? So I know what you're saying here. I think you're referring to the sort of Lyle McDonald, Mike Israetel discussions recently. It varies. I think in general it is. So I know that when I came from powerlifting, I was very explosive because I trained to be explosive for years. Everything either exploded up or I died. But if I was doing a maximum lift in a competition, I would strain. So it's kind of a difficult question to answer, because in the gym I would push, and I would die. Okay. What I mean by that is my reps would be fast, explosive, and I was very explosive. In my younger days, I was a particularly explosive lifter. But I've shown you guys some of my 1 rep maxes on this channel before, and they're always quite slow going up. So your actual 1 rep max should be slow, but people aren't typically doing their 1 rep max in the gym. They're typically doing sets. And the question that you're asking is, should you grind your sets, or do they just die off? In my experience, when I was training, just regular training and working hard, I didn't really grind that much. It just didn't happen. I grind now because I've trained myself to grind. One of the things my old coach taught me about 12 years ago now is he taught me to be explosive. He's like, everything has to be explosive. And so I asked him about the grinding question back then. He's like, you don't want to grind in the gym. You don't want to grind your lifts. Everything should be explosive. Even your hardest lifts should be explosive. So is it a good indicator? Not always. I get what Lyle's saying. And in general, for him, it's right. He grinds. But it's something that I had to teach myself. It's not, I didn't grind before, even on a set of like 6 to 8, I wasn't grinding by the end. I would go and then I would die, particularly for things like the bench press. I mean, I would be so explosive with the chest and then it would just die. But if I was doing a single rep max, then I would grind. So I don't think that's a good argument to say that we should always grind, because when you're doing reps, in my experience, if you are very explosive, you don't tend to grind. It's just different when you do a single 1 rep max. So is it a good indicator? Yeah, I mean, I've got to say it depends, dude. It depends on who you are. Like, look at your past lifting history. When you've truly failed a set, did you grind? If you did, then yes, it's a good indicator for you. If you didn't, then no. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's go for one more. We've still got some time. Benj Strength says, and I think Benj is a new subscriber, so welcome to the channel, Benj. If you want to get as strong as possible, reasonable body fat, then what's the best way to pack muscle mass on the fastest for powerlifting purposes? No technique, no arch, no nothing, just muscle mass. Okay. I will say, Benji, with the technique, I think you're talking about like bench presses with an arch. Just to be sure, with the bench press with an arch, that doesn't really happen that much in weight classes that people, in anything but the lightweight weight classes. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But anyway, your question was, how do you pack on mass as quick as possible for powerlifting? Okay. Reps. I think this is a bit of a misconception, and I'm going to make a video on this actually, Benji, is that people have this misconception that to get strong, you have to do low reps all the time. It is BS. That's not how I got strong. I got strong doing reps. Like, you have to learn how to handle a 1 rep max. You have to learn how to strain against a heavy weight. Sure, I know disagreements there, but to get strong, you have to do reps. You have to get jacked. Like, there's no high-level powerlifter gets strong just from doing singles and doubles. That doesn't happen. If you look at my tactician program, that is all 8s, 5s, and 3s, mostly 8s and 5s. I did most of my off-season powerlifting using 8s. In fact, there's another video I'm going to make. I'm going to talk you guys through a training cycle I did to get one of my biggest squats. I'll make a whole new video on that. I'm going to talk to you about the rep scheme that I used and the sets that I used and the sheer amount of work that I was doing at the time, because it was a lot. Like, it was a ton of lifting and it was all reps. So there is the guys who you see who are like really, really strong and they're not very big. I guarantee you, if they gain 20 pounds of muscle, they would be even stronger. And I know that because if you look up a guy called Tom Martin's a deadlift specialist. When he was, 20, 21 years old, he beat Ed Cohen's 35-year-old deadlift record, junior deadlift record. Now, Tom went on to add on something like 40 pounds of lean muscle onto his frame to become one of the best powerlifters in the world and one of Britain's, or if not the best English powerlifter of all time. So more muscle mass only is going to make you stronger. Like, to get strong, you need mass. To build mass, you need reps. People talking about building strength with low reps and low volume are not talking about the type of strength that I'm talking about. I'm talking about strength which is going to make your jaw drop. Like, just getting to 100, like, no offense to anyone, but like just doing some low repetitions and getting to a 100 kilo bench press, that's not strong. Getting to 140 kilo bench press is not strong in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's still not amazing. Like, and so if you can do that with a fairly light frame or whatever, great. But I guarantee you getting bigger is going to give you bigger numbers. So most people who think that low reps and low volume builds strength are not building the type of strength that I'm talking about. So the best routine is one which features reps and for you to actually get more muscular. And to do that, the best routine that I know of is my routine, the Tactician. You can buy it from my website, £10. Great. I think that's the best system. And it's a system that I use to make the bulk of my gains when I was powerlifting. That is what packs muscle on you. Reps, appropriate periodization, having some singles in there, but mostly repetitions on variations. Right, let's go with another question. Mind Body Strong says, in terms of recovery, what do you think about massages as part of recovery? Not a lot of people address this as a method to help with the recovery process. I recently started implementing frequent massages, and it has helped me recover a lot faster with optimal sleep, diet, etc. Very good. Well, I'm pleased for you. It's good. If it's working for you, then that's great. Now, I have done some research on massages. Up until about a couple of years ago, when lockdown happened, I was getting regular massages, and actually I just didn't get back in the habit of doing them. But yeah, I used to do a massage probably once every 3 or 4 weeks, I think, something like that. And it was fine. Like, it was okay. The research is very much split on it. So I would say this. Firstly, if you're seeing progress, you're seeing results, great. You carry on. Now, in terms of what the research says that the research says people seem to think it helps. So the research says that it provides a level of belief that it does help, if that makes sense. Like, people doing research thinks it helps. So let's say they had these people in a research study and they made them do massage or get a massage. Those people thought it helped them. It gave them better subjective feelings of recovery. However, it didn't actually increase their recovery more, if that makes sense. Like, so on paper, like, the results, they didn't get better results, but they felt better about it, if that makes sense. So the research, I would say, is equivocal on it. I think it's still very split. It's still undecided. I personally think they're all right. I don't get any massages anymore. I think sleep is probably a bigger factor. Sleep is a massive factor. But if you feel it helps you, then I think that's very important. And so carry on doing it. And I think you're also new to the channel, so thank you for tuning in. Right, let's go with one more question. Ezra Val says, I'm a beginner who's skinny. I'm wondering how I can tell if I'm gaining too much fat too fast. I've gained a noticeable amount of fat on my stomach and face, but I can't tell too much of a difference anywhere else. That's not a good sign. My weight has been all over the place recently, but it's been pretty consistent overall. I think it's just my genetics and body fat distribution, but how do I tell? By the way, I'm not afraid to gain a little bit of fat. Well, good on you. Actually, I did reply, but I gave him a reply. So here's what I would do, just to summarize the question. Yeah, rather than look at your weight day to day, I would look at your weight week to week. So take your body weight measurement at least 3 times a week and then average it. I do every day. Then have a weekly average. Weekly average tells you a lot more about your body weight. Use that to decide whether you're gaining or losing. Now, aim to gain about 1 or 2% of body weight per month. So let's say you weigh, 100 kilos. aim to gain about 1 or 2 kilos per month maximum. Okay, so if you're 100 kilos, probably just 1 kilo a month maximum is great. That's like 2.2 pounds, half a pound a week. That is plenty. Okay, and then basically get strong for reps. And I wrote at the end, hire me. So yeah, hire somebody who knows what they're doing. I mean, that's, you might think is an expense, but something that I tell people all the time is, when you get to my age, you realize that you don't get time back. And I know what you guys are going to say, like, Faz, you're not that old, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But you get the message, right? I don't get to be 20 years old again. I don't get to be 30 years old again. Like, you don't get time back. Like, money you can earn back, but time, experience of others, standing on the shoulders of giants, letting people who have been there and have done it show you the way forward will save you so much time. Like, this is one of the reasons why I believe in coaching so much, because like, I've hired coaches in the past. In fact, looking back now, I wish I'd hired more, because time can't be gotten back. I would rather you pay for some coaching for a few months, get yourself on track, and then go off and do your own thing, rather than waste 3 months thinking, well, I'm not going to hire anyone because I'll figure it out myself. Just there's so much information out there. Let somebody clarify it for you, get you on the right track, get you on the right path, so you know what you're looking for, you have the tools, and then you can just carry on and be set for life. I'd rather people do that. And this is not supposed to be an advertisement for my coaching, but like, it just makes sense. Like, don't waste your time. I've given you some general advice, but in terms of specific advice, that's what I would say there as well. Right, we are going to call it there, and I will go on to part 3 tomorrow. So hopefully you found that useful, guys. My glasses today have added an extra 50 IQ onto whatever else I had previously. So I will speak to you guys tomorrow, hopefully less bespectacled.